Have you ever wondered why the rich get richer and others don't? Could it be that a small percentage of the population seek out others to find, study, and execute on legal loopholes that exist within our financial life and make it easier for them to prosper? The answer is a resounding yes. This is the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. John has spent a lifetime researching and mastering the financial loopholes that he believes should be available to everyone. Join us as we explore different strategies that help you get farther faster towards building and enjoying a prosperous retirement.
Hello and welcome to the Secrets of the Wealthy with John Mintz. John, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be back. Thank you, Eric.
I know that you guys had a great time on a family trip, right?
We did. I'll tell you a little story. It'd be kind of fun. We took a trip. We flew to Long Beach, California, stayed there for a couple of days, and we got on one of those big boats, and we were going to ride across the Pacific. Was supposed to be 4 days across the Pacific to the Hawaiian Islands, then spend about 5 days there, and then 4 days back. So we get out into the ocean about, a day and a little bit. I think it's a day and a half, maybe. Mm-hmm. And the captain comes on the main speaker system. Now, you know, the cheesy cruise coordinator comes on a lot, but when the captain comes on, it's usually not going to be good news, right? No. So he comes on and he's very monotone, talks like this, and says, well, as you probably noticed, we are turning around. Oh. So, you know, when we start like that, it's not going to be good. No. So I guess one of the passengers was critical. In critical condition. So he made the decision, which I obviously think was a good one, to turn the boat around and go back because supposedly the care flight or whatever they call that cannot go past 12 nautical miles off the States. So we had to get inside of that for them to come pick the person up. So there's a kind of a crazy start to our trip, but it was a great trip anyway. You know, of course, they rerouted our itinerary, but turned out to be an awesome trip. Time to recharge and spend time with my gorgeous wife, and it's good to be back though.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And here's the thing: I knew right when you said that there was somebody who was critical that your attitude was like, no, turn the boat around. You know, so, and that's what I love about you is that, you know, you're not like, oh man, you know, you're not complaining about it. You're like, no, let's get this person to some safety and, you know, where a helicopter can pick them up or whatever. So no, I'm glad that it all worked out and you're healthy, your wife's healthy, and you had a good time. But
but I can tell you not everyone had the same attitude we
I'm
did.
Sure. Yeah. I can imagine there were some pretty upset people on that boat, and, you know, obviously they're not thinking of the fact that it could have been their family, right?
Exactly. So, or them. Yeah.
Or them.
Yeah.
Or them.
Yeah, exactly. I agreed.
Well, we are back at it with the podcast. And the first thing you always like to do is give a market update. So let's jump into that.
I do. And you know what? For the first time in over a year, things are looking a bit positive. I do want to use the word a bit.
A bit.
Yes. And so just to recap last year, the pain that we all kind of experienced last year, the markets, I think the S&P was down a little over 20% last year, the Dow down a little over 10, and the NASDAQ was north of 30. So it wasn't a very fun year, but they have rebounded over the last few months. The markets have rebounded, and it's starting to show a little strength, and I'll explain that in a minute. But strength meaning, you know, I put a lot of weight on what I call the 200-day moving average. And so the S&P 500 has moved back above the 200-day moving average as of January 23rd. So the bottom around October 12th was 35.77, and today we sit at 40.79. Now that's a far cry from the 4,800 we were at, you know, at the beginning of this thing, but it's now been above the 200-day moving average for better part of 2.5 weeks.
Hmm.
And so that's the good news. And that's the first time we've had that since we started this whole mess. So that's just showing, it's starting to show a little strength. However, it needs to hold that for another month, probably, for us to think, okay, we're moving north again. And and now here's the not so good news. I have a hard time believing it's going to hold. I think it's going to be, not just a head fake. It's going to be a major head fake, because rates are still going higher. In fact, the Fed has recently said that they don't think one or two more raises is going to get it done. And we've got this stubborn inflation. I call it sticky inflation, that, it has come back from its highs, but man, it's holding course and not wanting to retreat. We're still in the high sixes, low sevens, depending on who you ask, and they're wanting to get to 2. I don't think we're going to make it to 2. I think we're going to level off somewhere between 3 and 4, and hopefully that's something that we can sustain. But I expect the Fed to raise rates, if you're asking me, 3 more times this year, and then not start to lower rates until mid to latter part of next year, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing's just going to take some time. And so, but all that being said, it's good to see a little bit more money in people's pockets, or at least their retirement accounts, those that have money in the markets. And hopefully, we can get through this 70s, 80s type sticky inflation that we're all dealing with, so that we can all go back to, paying less than, I don't know, $12 for a dozen of eggs or whatever it's going for right now. So,
yeah, seriously.
Anyway.
So let me ask you this: with the Fed raising the rate, from just rumors, that's why I come to you, because I want to dispel the rumors. But what I've heard is that they're still going to raise it most likely, but they're, instead of raising it 0.75 like they have in the past, it's going to be 0.25. It'll be smaller raises. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to see. They started out very heavily with a series of 3 quarters, and then they went to a half, and then you'll see quarters now, because they're at the same time as they do have this goal of 2%. At the same time, they also don't want us to go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Extreme, right? Which could very easily happen and go into depression. And so they don't want that to happen. But they also, if you know anything about the 70s, 80s, the Fed did the same thing, and then they eased off too early. And we went right back to where we were, and it took forever to come out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dow went 16 years and went nowhere. So they don't want that to happen. So I think they're going to stay the course a little longer than people thought, maybe, and then we'll start to see some relief, hopefully, next year.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that's great for the market update part of it. Now we're on to what I'm assuming is going to be fun, because you told me the title, and the title of the podcast is "What Gets Measured Gets Done." And as a coach, I love that. I love that. So what are we talking about?
It is going to be fun. I was having a conversation with my 86-year-old mom a little earlier, and somehow it came up. We're talking about, master craftsmanship, that he was master craftsman. And somehow came up that we had seen this house. My wife and I look at the house, and we've seen this house where she's very particular, and she saw the sink where it had like a 1/4-inch gap on the side of the sink. And this is a new house. She said, well, they just overcut that. And I said, yep. It's like my dad used to say, measure twice, cut once.
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
So what gets measured gets done. But this means a little bit different on this one. I had considered writing a book with this title once. I, like most folks, are busy, A, and B, I'm not very good at writing. But this is something that means a lot to me, because I have proven it over time and time again, both business and personal, that it is a reality. But the American Psychological Association did a study, and they labeled this, if you want to look it up, it's called "Frequently Monitoring Progress Towards Goals Increases Chance of Success." And I'm not going to read you the whole article, but I'm going to read you their final paragraph in this article, which is their findings.
Mhm.
And it says, our findings are of relevance to those interested in changing their behavior and achieving their goals, as well as to those who want to help them, like weight loss programs, money advice agencies, or sport coaches. And then this gentleman by the name of Harkin goes on to say, prompting people to monitor their progress can help them to achieve their goals, but some methods of monitoring are better than others. Specifically, we would recommend that people be encouraged to record, report, or make public what they find out as they assess their progress. So that's a very, very complicated way of saying what gets measured gets done.
Mhm.
So I'm turning 60 this year in October. It's kind of hard for me to say that, but it is a reality. And so for me at this point, it's all about the quality over the quantity, right? And so turning 60, and I've always been in pretty good health most of my life, and I wanted to stay there, right? Because I want quality.
Yeah.
And so I found this guy online, and he had come up with this thing called the Hard 75. Have you ever heard of the Hard 75, Eric?
No, I have not.
Well, this guy, he was a former fitness trainer, and he didn't like the way some of the diets programs worked and all that. And he was wanting, and he had a military background, and he was wanting something a little bit tougher. That's the name, hard. And so why 75 days? Well, he proved, it says 21 days to create a new habit. He says that isn't the case. It's actually 63 days. And if you have 75 days of commitment and you allow yourself a little bit of room for error in there, right? Because nobody's perfect for 75 days. He said, if that it leaves you 12 days of error and you're still 63 days, and you will have created a new habit. So I'm going to do that. I'm starting the day after Super Bowl, actually, February 13th. And I'm going to go 75 days with this Hard 75. Now, the name hard means that. So it's dieting without, going off of the deep end. It is no alcohol. It is 45-minute workouts a day.
Wow.
And it is reading 10 pages of nonfiction a day and meditating for 15. So, and then, of course, I do have a few other things to do during the day.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not complaining. I'm actually really excited about it because it's these types of challenges and discipline that drive me. But the real secret to the whole thing, why I'm bringing it up, is that he sends you this very, very, 8.5 by 11 thick journal where you literally journal every single thing that you do every day. So he's got a built-in checklist in there. So did I or did I not do my exercise, my workouts? Did I not read? You're checking it off as you go, which is your own accountability partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's measuring it. Why? Because if I measure it, I'm more likely to do it because I don't want to let myself down.
Yeah.
Right. And be embarrassed. And so I'm pretty excited about it. It went viral when he first created it, and it went out on social media. It went viral big time. And there's a lot of people who've done a lot of different versions of it since. So I'm pretty fired up about it. And maybe by the next time we circle back, I'll be able to maybe give you an update on where we're at with it, and good, bad, or indifferent. Am I suffering or am I feeling better than I've ever felt? That kind of thing, right?
Well, I've already made a note to ask you how the Hard 75 is going, so we'll definitely be checking in with you for sure. And here's the thing: is that the bottom piece of that article that you read, one of the other things I picked up on was when you make it public, you have accountability right there, right? I used to talk to my kids and folks that I was working with about quitting smoking. That was just my example. It didn't mean they were smokers, but I said, if a smoker says, I'm going to quit smoking and doesn't tell anybody, when they relapse 2 days in, nobody knows and they don't really care. They're like, nobody else knows. Not a big deal. If you really want to get serious, say, I'm going to quit smoking. then tell your spouse, tell your kids, tell your coworkers, hey, look, I'm going to quit smoking. Make sure that I'm sticking to this. Would you help me with this? Because it's a difficult thing to do. And creating a new habit is always going to be very, very difficult. But when you get others involved that care about you, quite honestly care about you, it's a whole lot easier because they're going to give you that encouragement, but you also don't want to let them down, right?
Yeah, it's the truth. And so, I really find, I think it's part of why I do what I do. I find human behavior, it's really just interesting to me. And what I mean by that is why we do the things we do, why we react or respond the way we do, what scares us, what excites us. Those things are interesting to me, which is why I think I really enjoy working with individuals and couples as much, and just really getting to know them and guiding them or helping them. And so, yeah. But to give you some examples from a financial perspective of how this plays in, let me tell you a couple of stories. I had this couple this one time come into me. They were referred to me by my pastor, and they come in and they had 4 kids, happily married, 4 kids, and they just really were having a hard time, financially speaking, getting ahead. So they came in and they're really, really wanting help. And so I'm going through their expenses with them. And I said, well, how much do you spend on this? How much do you spend on this? How much do you spend on groceries? Well, now this is about 5 years ago, before inflation. Okay. We spend about $3,000 a month on groceries.
I'm sorry, what?
And that's what I said. I said, no. I think you misunderstood me. I said groceries. And the lady said, yeah, I understood you. And I said, how's that possible? She said, well, I buy everything organic because I want my family and my kids to have the best. And this was back when organic was, a newer thing. And so I said, well, you know what? Here's what I want you to do. For the next 30 days, I want you to go home and I want you to track your expenditures at the grocery store only. Just the grocery store. Don't track any other expenditures, just the grocery. So every time you go to the grocery store, when you come home, I want you to save the receipt, whether it's you go and you spend $800 in one trip, or you, because he's going to have some of those to get the 3,000, right? Or you spend $80. I don't care. Save the receipts and then come back in and see me in 30 days and bring those receipts. So she came back in with her husband and she said, you know what? She said, we spent a lot less. And I said, well, how much less did you spend? She said, we spent $1,500. And I said, why? And she said, well, I'm not sure. And I said, do you think maybe it's because every time you came home and you had to put those receipts in a bucket and look at them, measuring them, right? She's measuring that maybe your conscious, the next time you went, made you have a little bit more discipline. And you could see the light bulb going on. I had another couple come in. Similar story, living paycheck to paycheck, and they need to save and can't save. So I had to have them, we had no idea where the money was going, but these people are making great money, all of them. And so I had them go for 30 days, track all of their expenditures, and then come back, see me again. And so they came back and see me, and I said, okay, let's look at what the problem, see if we can figure out what the problem is. And as always, they knew what the problem was. They said, oh, John, we had no idea we were giving our 2 teenage kids $1,200 a month in cash.
Oh my Lord.
Now
it sounds money.
It sounds like it, but if you think about it, if I give Johnny $50 for a date and Susie $150, to go to, with her friends to eat, because I want her to make sure she's got more money than everybody else to eat, or drink or whatever. And then, give them cash for the movies and cash for it. It's amazing how quick it can add up.
Yeah.
And there's they just said, I said, well, are you okay with giving them that much? Well, no, John, of course not. We're not dumb. And so I said, well, what are you going to do? So I usually, I love it when people can solve their own problems. They just need me as a tool, right?
Yeah.
And so they said, well, what we've decided to do is we're going to give each of them at the beginning of the month $200 each. And of course, their eyes are going to get really big when you give them that much at one time. And we're going to tell them, when the month is over, if you have money left over, you get to keep it. But if it's gone in a week, I guess you're going to have to borrow from someone else because it's not coming from us. And so now what have they done? They're teaching their kids discipline, but they have another $800 a month to save.
Yeah.
Right. And so the whole secret to both of those stories is what?
It's accountability and just discipline.
Yeah.
Right. You're providing accountability by opening their eyes to it, I guess, but it's, they found it within themselves to understand what they were doing wrong. They just needed somebody to say, hey, let's take a closer look.
Yeah. They both started with measuring.
Yes.
They had to measure the activity first, not the goal. They didn't even need a goal. They just need to measure the activity. And then once they measured the activity, they knew the problem. And then once they know the problem, they can provide a solution. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Very true.
Yeah. And so that's really, I guess that's why I love what I do, because that's what I do for a living. I measure what's going on, figure out the problem, and provide a solution. That's what we do. And so, so anyway, I guess the sum of the whole, and this will be a shorter podcast today, but if we can motivate one person, whether it's for weight loss or whether it's for, just wanting to gain more knowledge and read on a daily basis, or they just want to be financially savvy, it all starts with measurement. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And John, like you said, this is what you do. This is what you love to do. And again, I love to see results as well. So kind of talk to me about how you do this with your clients. How do you bring them in and put them in a position where they can see the changes that they're making and see that progress?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Well, yeah, it's a very similar process done in a more robust way, but folks come in and we sit down, and of course we have them bring their details with them, the details of their financial life with them. And we take that information and we, through data entry, we enter that into our software. And what that software does is it gives us a benchmark. It gives us a starting point to say, okay, this is where we're at. And so based off of that, then we can, based on where we're at, if they like where they're at, great. If they don't like where they're at, then we can begin to provide a roadmap going forward to improve that. So what this allows us to do on a semi-annual or annual basis is to look back over a longer period of time, just like I'm going to be looking back as I'm doing my Hard 75, right? I'm going to be looking back into the pages that I've been tracking and seeing my own progress is going to motivate myself by being able to see my progress as opposed to not see it.
Yeah.
And so we do that ongoing. So every single time we sit with someone, we're measuring and tracking that, so that 6 years later, 8 years later, 12 years later, we get to look back. I had a couple in this last week that had been with me for 12 years. And I went back to the original one we did. And I said, look, when you guys started, you want to know how much you had? The wife said, nothing. So they actually had $68,000. And 12 years later, they had, I think it was north of $700,000.
Wow.
So that's fun. And it's more motivating to them because they're like, oh, we got to, their oldest is going to college now. We got to figure out how we're going to pay for that. And I said, well, do you think we've had any other challenges over the last 12 years? And they said, well, yeah. I said, well, you know what? We've made quite a bit of progress in spite of those challenges, and we still will. So it's a matter of just making sure you continue to measure, you continue to focus. And so that's how we do it. We have that, we measure as upfront, and then we measure as we go, So we can hold them accountable, but guess what? They get to hold us accountable too.
Yeah.
And so that's how we do that.
That's a good point. That is a very good point, because I think that that's what's missing in most situations where somebody's working with an advisor or a financial guru, if you will. They're kind of on the outskirts. There's not a relationship there. And that's what I know that you and I've talked about that a lot. You've talked about it on the podcast. If there's no relationship there, it's not worth your time, right? You've got to have a relationship with these folks. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Good. All righty, sir. Well, I appreciate all the updates. Appreciate the hard 75. I'm gonna have to take a look at that, because I have not heard of that before. And now I'm interested, because I do need to make some changes in my own life, and we'll see how that goes. But until next time, thank you for all you do.
Eric, the pleasure is mine. And you're always on point. I appreciate it.
You betcha. And our last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when John comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This also makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at the Secrets of the Wealthy, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of John Mintz. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.